Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depends upon where you are in the world. Where I am is in the training division library at Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Department. And you'll see in the background here, we've got our archives of fire engineering magazines from many years ago. And of course, the ones with my articles in them, I put right up in the front there, to kind of push them along. In fact, this month, I have an article in the March edition of Fire Engineering. My name is Bill Gustin, and I am a captain with the Miami-Dade Fire Department. I have two special guests with us today, Andrew Silverman, who I actually worked with his dad when his dad was a battalion chief, and Andrew Liriano.
Yes, sir.
And Andrew is the best-looking guy in the room, and I'm the oldest guy in the room, and Andrew is the best groomed guy in the room. Okay, so we've got it all. We also have another guest, but before that, I want to give a shout out to Key Hose. That's keyhose.com. I have my hands on it every day because I am the standpipe hose project manager for our 2-inch standpipe hose. I make no endorsements for any size or grade or type of hose. I do endorse and I do encourage every department to do their homework. It used to be that we only had two choices for standpipe hose, and that was 2.5 and 1.75 inches. Well, now Key, and there's other manufacturers as well that are producing true ID 2.5-inch hose, true 2.25-inch hose. Then we have my department is using the 2-inch hose. And it has a lot to do with the type of construction you have, the volume of the compartmentation, whether it's a business, whether it was built before 1993. But there's a lot of choices out there. And if you're in the market for new hose for standpipe ops, you really need to look out there because there's been some great innovations in the fire hose industry, especially with Key. Our other special guest today is Jim Walsh. And if I could just say something, I had the privilege of teaching with Jim. He's going to tell a little bit about himself here momentarily. I just want to tell you that he piqued my interest. He was teaching management principles, and I sat in on his class. He followed mine at a conference. And he mentioned that he is in the McMansion, if you will, McMansion, large suburban home capital of the world. He's in the Central Florida area. And you have these many buildings there. Have you changed some of your tactics or configured some of your apparatus? And he said, yeah, absolutely. Well, it really got me interest in it. So we're going to have a discussion. That's going to be the topic. But if you want to expand a little bit tell a little bit more about yourself, Jim.
Sure. My name is Jim Walsh, and I just recently retired from the City of Winter Park Fire Department after 20 years. And I was in the training position, and we had just a lot of great things happening in Winter Park, and a lot of just good innovation and so forth. But what kind of piqued your interest was how we designed and tweaked all of our apparatus. There's nothing standard about an apparatus in Winter Park. We now have a tillered apparatus for our aerial, which is a big thing in Central Florida. There's not any in Central Florida. And we drastically changed our engines and everything like that. So we definitely, we listened to the needs of the firefighters and listened to the needs of the community and the expectations of the community. And that's why we now design our apparatus based on that.
Jim, we're going to get into more detail, and we don't have a very big group today, so which is a good thing, because with the other topic we're going to be talking about today is drones, which fits right in with this large suburban home fire problem. So Sam Hiddle, if you tell just a real quick about yourself.
Afternoon, captain with Wichita Fire. And I never thought I would say this, but I'm actually looking forward to discussing some of the engine pitfalls that go along with these large homes. You know, obviously, like we were discussing before this whole thing started, we're not going to be able to discuss everything. So encourage people to get out there and join one of the hands-on engine classes at FDIC if you want to learn more and get better at the one thing we have to do, which is put water on the fire.
Yes, we have FDIC coming up in less than a month. If you've never been, it's worth the time, it's worth the effort, it's worth the money. It is just an unbelievable experience. It's like we're all going to Mecca. That's the firefighters' Mecca, if I can say that. And it gives you a chance to sit back and reflect on your career, and you get to network with firefighters from really all around the world and some of the best minds in the fire service. And it's an unforgettable experience. The hands-on are absolutely superb with the most renowned, well-respected fire officers in the country and the team that they assemble for themselves. The ladder company, some of the basics, just the basic things. It's always like, for instance, we're having this discussion with Jim today about how he does his business in Central Florida. You get instructors from all over the country that are on this head instructors team. You will walk away with so many new techniques and hose configurations, deployment methods, ladder deployment methods. You think you know it all until you go to FDIC and you get to work with some of the best. So can't say enough about that. I've got Dan Shaw, who is, I would say, has a fair amount of experience with, I know he lives in a McMansion. Are we going to be hearing from McDonald's legal department if I keep calling it McMansion? Are we going to end up with a McLawsuit? I'm wondering.
You'll be okay.
Okay, you know what? They're going to go for the deepest pockets. So, Dan, you got it. They're going to come after you. Dan.
I appreciate that, Bill. Hey, it's great to see you guys again. Dan Shaw, Deputy Chief, assigned to Operations at A Shift in Fairfax County Fire and Rescue. And really looking forward to this conversation. This is the residential structure, regardless of the size, is something we run in the United States every 64 seconds. And every year that number just decreases every year. We see it was 65 seconds in 2017. So it's something that the United States, you as a firefighter, you get to craft the narrative. You get to write the story, whether you're going to be successful or you're not, every 64 seconds. So we should always be prepared for it, and as much knowledge as we can accumulate, especially with this panel we have here. As Sam said, if you can get to FDIC, man, what a place to go get a collection of information and develop that mastery. So when your 64 seconds does come up, you're ready for the firefight.
Thank you, Chief Shaw. Commander Lamping.
Good morning, everybody. Captain Clark Lamping, Clark County Fire Department here in Las Vegas. This year at FDIC, I will be teaching Fighting Fire in an Age of Plastics and Foams. It's a very relevant topic as we just had, I can't show you any video or anything, but we had a near miss in Clark County 3 days ago. We had some firefighters on the roof of a commercial 90,000 square foot commercial, and it was a polystyrene insulated roof. The wind changed and it blew fire on top of these guys, and they had to bail down the aerial apparatus, actually run down the aerial apparatus as they tried to move the aerial away from the building. It melted all the lenses on the bucket, discolored the paint, all that stuff. So I will be talking about that specific near miss at FDIC this year, and I couldn't agree with Chief Shaw and Captain Gustin more. It is amazing. FDIC is absolutely amazing. Hands-on classes, some of the best you will ever get in the United States in your career. And then the classroom stuff is fantastic as well. Just so many classes to choose from every single time slot. If you can't find something you're interested in a certain time slot, you're doing it wrong, I promise you. So that's it. Looking forward to this discussion.
Let's see. Chief Halton is coming back. Bobby Halton, thank you for having Izzy do a little cameo role there. It is Izzy, isn't it?
That's
yeah, you know I love that dog. So,
I do too.
You have a few words for us, Chief Halton.
Thank you. It's extremely fascinating time. We're just days away from FDIC, and there is some space available in the classes, as were mentioned earlier. I couldn't recommend more. The Brian Arnold's Engine Company Essentials. That's what we're going to be talking about for me in the class. So thank you so much. But what's fascinating also is I've been doing a lot of homework lately as to when all this, plastics stuff began. I hope you can see that title. That was only written in 1945. Yeah. And this here book by Dr. Deborah Wallace, which has got the same exact title as Clark's class. If you look at the bottom of it, Fighting Fire in the Age of Plastics. There we go. Why today's fires are more dangerous. She wrote it.
I might have got my class title from that book, Chief, but let's keep that on the down low, please.
Yeah, there you go. She only wrote it in 1990, so nobody will notice, right? Yeah, right. So, but anyway, so thank you for having me. I'm just a flaneur. I hang out in coffee shops and talk about firefighting. That's basically my gig. And I too am also looking forward to FDIC. It's just amazing. And the point of personal privilege here for a moment, we'll be recognizing the lifetime achievement of Captain Bill Gustin. So please join us to tell the old Cap thanks for his 40+ years of service to not only Miami Metro Dade, but to America with his teachings and trainings throughout the country. And it's a tremendous privilege. And Bill will not only be receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award, he'll be joining Chief Norman and I in an unplugged session. It will be an NC-17, so no children will be allowed due to Bill's, somewhat checkered past. So I'm just kidding. So please join us for Unplugged, and it should be entertaining and exciting. That'll be 5:30 on Wednesday, and then Bill will be receiving his Lifetime Achievement Award on Thursday morning. So please join us and Bill's family in recognizing him and just a lifetime of commitment. So with that, I think we ought to talk about. Oh, and by the way, my CV on McMansions, I ran a Republican ghetto just north of DFW Airport called Coppell, where in 2003 the average median income was 180 grand a year, and the McMansion basically just talks about the standardization of homes that are massive. I mean, we're talking homes in excess of 4,000, 6,000, and sometimes 8,000 and 10,000 square foot, which are which are just daunting, right? It's not the shotgun shack, the little 1,800 square foot, fire that you can have. And these mansions have everything from theaters to indoor water features and elevators, which are just phenomenal. And if you're not ready for it, they can pose significant issues. So thank you, Bill, for the topic, and thank you all for being here. And it's great to be among such great company.
Joe, if you show the first still picture, I want to give a shout out. I was warmly welcomed yesterday at Homestead Air Reserve Base Fire Department. Joe, if you can show that first picture. I don't know if it can come up big on the screen. That's myself and Assistant Chief Americo Mendez. One of the reasons I went out there is I've been intrigued with the ultra high pressure fog apparatus that was developed, I believe, for the Air Force, but is now being used in rural America quite a bit. I'm intrigued, still a little bit, honestly, a little skeptical. But that's the first picture there. Can you see it full screen, fellas?
No, you can see it in your thumbnail, but it's not full screen on my end.
It's
Okay.
full screen on mine.
If you hover, put your hover over and click on it, it'll bring you up to full screen.
Great. Okay, that's the apparatus, and that's the control tower. Actually, we're going there to do a little exercise here right after the hangout today. Could you show the next picture there, Joe? Okay, that's Chief Lorenza Gardiner, and he is the head of the. It's a reserve unit, and then there's a civilian fire units. I'm not exactly sure how they're organized. However, I will tell you this, Chief Halton, we are going to have a Google Hangout specifically focused with our brothers and sisters in the military fire service and military installations. I'm going to be reaching out for you with contact with the Navy. I think we pretty much, we've got a good contact here. They're willing to participate.
I'll be happy to do that, Bill. You may want to drop by our DoD symposium on Friday at FDIC. It's our 5th annual DoD symposium where we have the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, the Marines, Air Force all come together. And then we have a special cutout section for just the Army because they have a lot of other ancillary issues to talk about. But we're anticipating roughly 3,000 to 5,000 military personnel participating.
And I will pass that on. I'm going to be visiting with these folks today. I have to tell you this, Chief Halton. The F-16s were taking off, and you know, it'll get your attention. I mean, you can't talk, you just have to wait for them to take off. And I asked these guys, I said, do you ever get tired of that, or do you ever, get used to it? And he says, man, no, because that is the sound of freedom.
Amen.
Profound words when those, just something about a jet fighter aircraft taking off is just, you never get tired of it. If you can show the next picture, Joe. That's right, 15 GPM at 1100 PSI. If you'll see, the hose it's connected to looks like a heavy-duty hydraulic hose. Very interesting. I think if you have the heat and you have the confinement, it would be very, very effective. And then the last picture is this. Look at this crazy old man. That's actually, the pump pressure there is like 1200 PSI. So the idea is that you're going to break the water down to its lowest particle size. Now, we've been here before. We've had that rodeo before. But it's got its applications. And it's like everything else, it has its limitations. Okay, a little bit about McMansions, large suburban homes. Let's talk about the fundamental reasons why they're built. Why do they even build them? They build them to make fools and clowns out of the fire department, because they're built to burn, especially when the fire gets in the frigging attic, because you have a multitude of valleys, hills, turrets, what cupolas, I think the word is, gables. And on the inside, these roof lines converge, and it is terrible to try to get water up in there. Now, what my department has done is we've configured our small, actually they're not quints, they're just engines with small aerial pieces, 50, 65 foot, 70 foot platforms and ladders with a pre-piped waterway. And our objective is to get up in there and get that water in from below, blasting through the ceiling. We may have to get up there with a saw and cut the impact-resistant laminated glass, but that's our objective. Additionally, because of the length of the driveway, we used to teach our company officers to pull slightly past the fire building to leave room for a later arriving truck. Well, the truck would be hundreds of feet away from the apparatus. So now we may stop short to allow the driveway to remain clear so we could get one of these short wheelbase apparatus in there. So, and the other thing we do a lot of is a split lay, where we will drop our supply line at the main road. We have our guests today. Shortly after our first go around here, we're going to talk about drones, because locating the fire off of a main road is our first challenge. Okay, I'm going to jump right over to Jim, Chief Jim Walsh. And Jim, take as much time as you want and tell us your story about the type of department you have and how your department has met the challenges.
Sure, I appreciate the invite. So, Winter Park is the north border of the city of Orlando. It's a very small city. It's only 10 square miles, and we have 3 firehouses in 10 square miles. So there's about 30,000 population. So we're pretty densely populated for that particular setup. But the big problem is we have a lot of lakes in the city, and we can't get from here to there. There's no really easy way to get from here to there. So that's why we have the stations we have. But as a result, we also have the ability to get a lot of people on scene pretty quickly, which is pretty fortunate. And with the McMansions that we have, we don't have, we have certainly 15,000 square or 1,500 square foot houses, but we have a number of houses that are 15,000 plus. So it definitely makes things different. But what we ended up doing was we decided to take a different approach when we started working with our apparatus designers. And we actually were doing what's called tactical, or what we're calling tactical apparatus design. And what we're actually doing is we're building our apparatus based on our needs in Winter Park. We're not going with the standard, the standard configuration on things and stuff like that. For example, when we did our tiller, there was only 4 departments in the state of Florida at this point that have tillers, and we were the 4th, if you will. And it definitely works for us. And so when that worked out really well with the tiller. That was the first thing that we did, and it was dramatic. It was a dramatic change because in Central Florida, everything has a pump and everything has a tank. So we were one of the first apparatus in Central Florida to ditch the tank and pump, but it's worked really, really well for us. And then once we did our new engines, we did the same approach where we just really took it, from the beginning and said, what do we need? What do we actually need in the apparatus? And so we one of the things we did was we did all the pre-connects out of the rear of the truck. That forces us to go past the building. So you see the 3 sides, and it allows the room for the truck. So it was a good win there. And fortunately, we don't have the setback issue that might you have in South Florida, because our stuff was so close to the lake, and we have the lake and the actual street in front of us. So we don't have a lot of depth, but what we have is width. So what they actually have done is typically they'll take 2 or 3 houses, level them, and that's how they make the McMansions, if you will. So that's how we end up with that. So we took the same design with those engines, as far as we shorten the wheelbase a little bit, put the pre-connects out of the rear, and do a lot of things like that really made sense to us. And it really didn't make the apparatus longer. It actually made it shorter and more maneuverable. So all of our apparatus rather are maneuverable, which is really important in our city. And it works for us. So I challenge everybody to, when it comes to your apparatus design, do not just do the status quo. Take your time to figure out what you need in your area and make sure that you hold the apparatus manufacturers responsible for actually doing what you need for your area. And I think that's going to be a really big thing for everybody.
Jim, we have a devil of a problem here in Miami-Dade with, we have big tandem axle quints. They're big, they're heavy, they're not very maneuverable. We have a time getting into gated communities and into definitely a driveway of a large single family home. Now, what is it about the tiller that makes it easier to get into making sharp turns or coming through a narrow gate, say, to a large suburban home?
Sure. So the big thing there is the wheelbase of the tractor. The wheelbase of just the tractor is going to determine the turning radius of the entire rig. So to put it in perspective, the wheelbase on Winter Park's apparatus is 149 1/4, 149 inches, 1.149 1/4. My 4-door pickup truck was 150 inches. Okay, so to put it in perspective, that entire apparatus can turn tighter than my 4-door pickup truck. So that's where the magic is. But some of the other things that happen is now you have a decreased ride height. We have a lot of trees in Winter Park, and the bucket, we had a rear mount, with a bucket that hanging over the apparatus. It was getting destroyed with the trees. Now the apparatus is a foot lower because everything is, the tiller cage is the actual highest part, and the tiller cage now, the tillerman can actually move it around, so you don't have that. There's a much more compartment space. To put it in perspective, our platform had 140 cubic feet of storage space. Our tiller has 490 cubic feet of storage space. Okay, so very significant there. It's lighter. A tillered apparatus, believe it or not, is lighter, and there's less wheel. There's two less tires on it. So for those reasons, it worked really well for us, and like I said, and it ended up making us a better spec on our engine as well, because we took that idea and moved it forward.
Well, we talked talked about this before we got on the air. That Jim, I'm going to be hounding you to write something for fire engineering. I think the story that you have to tell and how you've adapted your techniques and apparatus is intriguing, and it's pertinent to so many departments. Sam Hiddle, sir.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Would you relate some of your experiences, if any, in there in Wichita, Kansas with, I think there was a movie one time about a house in Kansas that a tornado came along and picked it up. I don't know if that house was a McMansion, but it was, yeah, it was something like that. And I think it took place in Kansas.
Yeah, quickly.
You know anything about it?
I would just say that I don't have a lot of experience in these, and so like any firefighting, when we get into something that it's not our bread and butter. When I've had the opportunity to fight fires in these, it's when we get sent out to the outskirts of town because they become extra alarm fires. And you know, some of the common mistakes is we look at it and we think of it as a house, and it's not. It's a small commercial building. They're no longer compartmented, because they have very large open areas. They're built by eccentric people, so they don't follow a cookie cutter plan. I mean, oftentimes you can find numerous kitchens and even laundry rooms just in the master bathroom. You're going to have much higher ceilings, and that 50-foot, 75-foot of working line that we like to believe in is no longer adequate. We have to stage a lot more working line to get in there and work.
Those are all good points. I'm going to get back to Jim for a moment there. What's your experience with the portable master streams? I don't want to mention any brand names, but it's got the single 2.5-inch inlet. Did you incorporate that into your fire attack arsenal?
Absolutely. Well, we hope to not have to use that. We hope to be able to get it, you know, on a smaller diameter line and that kind of thing. But absolutely, we have that, and we have it pretty readily to be deployed. So we don't have to hook things up or anything. It is dead loaded on a 3-inch. It's dead loaded on a 3-inch lay in the back of the apparatus, so we can just stretch it and go. And that it's definitely a viable option, and it works. They work really, really well. We definitely have to have that in our capabilities, but to have it in a compartment and not to have it ready to go on a hose, that's going to give you precious time that you're wasting. So if you're going to utilize that tactic, you want to make sure that it's set up and ready for success.
Right. Dan Shaw, coming to you from his, what is it, 15,000 square foot palatial. Thank you very much. Traditional training, huh? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
membership has its privileges.
I know, but you definitely, because I've seen it in the magazines and I've heard you guys talk, and I follow Fairfax County pretty closely. You're no stranger to these types of fires, Dan.
Yeah. I mean, I guess some of it is geographically to understand where we work. You know, we're a suburb of DC, and we are quickly becoming much more urban than we are suburban. So Fairfax County covers just under 400 square miles. With that, right now, I think we're at 1.2 million people who live in that 400 square miles, and it's steadily going up. We're becoming a vertical city. But because we are a suburb of a very affluent area, and it's a very affluent county, we have a wide spectrum from very poor areas to very, very, very affluent areas where, which we write in our manuals. So Fairfax County is 38 firehouses, about 1,500 members. And then on my shift, we got roughly about 400 every single day. And so there's a wide spectrum of what they deal with every single day. And then what we write into our manuals, our single family dwelling manual, we refer to them as McMansions or estate homes. And really it's anything that's greater than 3,000 square feet. Because it poses those challenges, much like what Sam has talked about. And the experiences we have are exactly what Sam was talking about, plus some other things. I mean, one is that that 3,000 square feet, he is spot on. I mean, you got to break that mentality of single family dwelling tactics, because you have longer stretches, you have deeper stretches, you have a fuel load that's going to be much greater in a space that has a vaulted ceiling. So you're going to kind of have a typical 8-foot ceiling. You got a much higher space. You have the large ag space, which typically is now going to mean is you're going to have multiple zones for AC and everything else, and that now you're going to have a dead load up in that ag space over top of you. So you're going to have an HVAC system that you're not expecting is going to drop down top of your head. That will, potentially end up happening to you. But one of the biggest issues we've seen, historically we've seen, we've had a couple of these, is that one of our companies where we had a Mayday several years back ago is they made a stretch into it. The fire was in the attic. The police helicopter could see the volume of fire because they had an aerial view. You could not see it from the street level. So what looked like from the street level, a manageable fire was indeed, in a large lumber yard over top of these guys. And shortly after they made the stretch inside of it, the enormous chandelier, which I'm sure that you have in your place, Bill, let go when they went in the front door. And invariably, what that chandelier came down and cut the first engine's hose line. So you have these large ceilings, you have these vaulted ceilings, you have this load up there. But the other big thing is, and this is specific to Fairfax County, we mandate that before companies make an entry, we have a lap of the structure. So you can actually see where the fire is, because for you to put the fire out, you got to locate, confine, and compartment. And you're not going to get that unless you can truly see where exactly that fire is. And in some situations, we delegate that to the third due engine, whose responsibilities go around the side Charlie. So it doesn't mean every single structure someone has to run around the building and get the information. Because we're fortunate in our response algorithm, we can get those units there in 6 to 8 minutes for the 4 engines and 2 trucks and a rescue company. But someone's going to give that report. But when you have a structure, and typically our McMansions that we're talking about are 10, 12, 20,000 square feet, there is no way, unless you have a jazzy scooter, somehow you're going to make it all the way around this building and you got a lap before you're going to make an attack on the structure. So there's some of that delay, right? So there's a desire to want to go put the fire out, which obviously gets rid of our problem. But we want to have that intelligent information so we know exactly what our problem is. Does this fire generate in the basement because it's 4 in the front and 5 in the rear? So there's a lot of tactical issues you have to overcome. And I think the first is exactly what Sam said, is you got to break this mentality that you're running a 1,200 square foot house and you can see the fire, you can go get it. There's going to be a whole multitude of challenges, to include, like, if you're short staffed, which it might be 6, 7 turns to get to the room where you got to put a line on the fire. Well, you're not going to make 6 or 7 turns with 2 people inside of a 7,000, 10,000 square foot house. So there are some inherent challenges to it. That first part is much like what we're talking about, is the recognition that you have these in your area, and then coming up with an actual plan that's going to match that fire you're going to fight.
Fellas, I'm going to take a little break here. We're going to mention our sponsor, but I'm going to begin an endorsement of Key Hose this way. There was a supplement in fire engineering, I think it was February, maybe the boss can correct me. It was Water on the Fire supplement. Excellent articles, an opinion, and in fact, of course, not just opinion, because he backs his opinions up with facts, is an article about the problems with Ys and trunk lines, particularly when it's 1 3/4, 2 3/4 lines being fed by a 2.5. And this falls right into the McMansion problem because of the length of stretch. It's typically beyond the reach of a pre-connect or beyond the effective range of 1 3/4 line. And Dennis is not a big fan of using a trunk line with 2 lines. Well, if you're going to use a single line and you still want it maneuverable, you're either going to have 1 3/4 hose with phenomenally low friction loss, say 25 per 100 feet at 185 gallons a minute, or take a look at the true ID 2 1/4 or the 2-inch hose that my department is now using for standpipe ops. But a good way of eliminating the use of the Y, if that is your objective, and just going with a longer hose line, is take a look at something developed by Key and some of the other manufacturers in the hose industry that approximates the flow of a 2.5-inch line, but has weight and skill sets, manpower requirements similar to 2.5 or 1.75 inches. Before we get to Clark and Chief Halton, Dan, you absolutely did a perfect, brilliant job of interviewing our two special guests, because you can't make a decision until you got that visual information. And I'm not going to say anything more because you already said it, Dan. See, you're a smart guy even when you don't want to be smart. So you're just a naturally smart guy. So
Don't tell my wife that.
no, but there's some ugly, dumb guy going around that you got his good looks and his brains. But as you'll see, you don't know how accurate you were. When we have our two fellas here, they're going to introduce themselves again and tell a little bit about Miami-Dade's pilot program. I'm going to step out of the way. Go ahead, guys.
How's everybody doing out there? So my name is Andres Liriano. I'm a captain with Miami-Dade Fire Rescue. Most people call me Andy. I am pretty much the lead pilot on the Miami-Dade Fire Rescue pilot program that we started. The program itself is just a 90-day pilot program to see how we can incorporate drone use into the fire department. Obviously, it's one of these things in where there's multiple uses. You could sit down on a round table and discuss how many different ways you could deploy a drone, use a drone for any type of public safety event. Our department has decided to create and solidify a deployment strategy in where we use it for large geographical areas, larger or greater assignments, second, third, fourth alarms, grass fires, any type of wildland fires, airplanes in remote areas, search and rescue in remote areas, water incidents, MCIs, the list goes on and on and on. McMansions being one of the topics that Captain Bill Gustin invited us over to today, which, by the way, I'd like to give him a thank you for the opportunity to allowing us to speak here today, as well as fire engineering for allowing us to share some insight on this. Next to me, I have firefighter Andrew Silverman. He's also one of the lead pilots on the program, and a little bit of background on him. He's actually one of the instructors for our driver engineering department for driver training. So he's well adept as far as how all these functions work on the engineering side as well. For sake of what you were speaking of a little earlier, Dan, was you have these large areas, McMansions, so to speak. So what are these McMansions? They're just large homes, and where they're sometimes very poorly built, because the idea is to have these large homes and developers want to build them as cheaply as possible. So you get misaligning roof lines, architectural misconceptions, and all these things that are involved inside of them. Down here in South Florida, we have a bunch of different types of areas, and where some areas surrounded by small homes, and then you have these large homes in the area as well. So where is a issue that we come into play? A lot of times we don't have a means of access or a direct means of access, so we have to look at certain geographical areas to see what the best point of access to do that. There's a fire going on. We see smoke in the area. Here in South Florida, we battle the actual problem with smoke change, wind change with the smoke. So it's hard for us to determine the actual location right away. With that being said, I think there's a video that was put on there. If we could somehow load it, let me know.
You should be able to talk over it there, Andy.
Perfect. All right. So what we're looking at right here is a McMansion, so to speak. So what we did here was kind of just did a walkthrough of the front of the house, of the front of the property, just kind of back and forth, almost determining our size up as we get there. And what you'll notice, we can't see anything past that front gate during line of sight, basically, is what we like to call. So our program allows us to actually take lift, and what it does, it's a tool for the incident commander. We by no means endorse any type of, this is the actual tactic that we use by anything. It's situational awareness, of which it enhances and allows our incident commanders to make a better decision. By deploying something like this on our end, we think it's a valuable tool. Not only does it increase safety, but it gives the incident commander an idea of how far is this setback for this property. Andrew Silverman himself, he's the one that got the footage on this. And the idea behind this is, guys, that if you have a large piece of property, a McMansion, a large setback, it is very simple for us to pretty much put this drone up in the air and give a recon tool, so to speak, from above. Like someone mentioned earlier, it might take, I don't know how many units or how many personnel just to make their way around to the back and then determine the length, what kind of layer you're going to do, what kind of firefighting tactics. This is just another tool on our end to help promote that. With that being said, it's not fail-proof, it's not safe-proof, foolproof as well. There is certain things that we have to go on our end to figure out. So we've solidified a good deployment strategy for the fire department, and with the backing of NFPA 2400, which just came out recently. And for those who don't know, It's the standard for all drone use for public safety. So what you're looking at here is pretty much an aerial reconnaissance of the area, and you could get an idea of where your alternate staging areas are. What's the best point of egress? Are there any hydrants that we can use in case we have to do a split lay or whatever the case may be? So on our end, the department is allowing us the opportunity to collect all this data for 90 days and present it back, and then hopefully make this a global product for everybody countywide in the department, since we do cover, give or take, what do you say, Bill?
Yeah.
2,000 square foot of
Can you hold
county
it?
property?
Can you do what we did right before the cast, where you hold that thing up and it's got our department colors, always ready, proud to serve. That's our motto. And Andrew, I'm very intrigued. I just found out that you have the capability of dropping Andrew Silverman, dropping a life preserver.
Yes, we have payload capabilities where with a remote we're able to release a carabiner with whatever it is that we want to carry within a few pounds. We've been playing around with on our fireboat where we can attach this onto the bottom of the drone, hook up a rope with the carabiner, and we could drop a life jacket to a victim drowning. We can also carry out paracord with anything else that they can hoist over to them. I see the possibilities with drones are endless, just finding where they fit into the fire service, when we can use it.
And fellas, Chief Halton had and I'm going to ask him in a moment to come back on. I think we're going to have growing pains, and it's going to be. Can you hear me, okay, folks? I'm going to come back.
They're
around.
nodding their head. They're saying yes.
Okay.
Come on through.
I'm going to have Chief Halton speak about when we first got thermal imagers. It was the Karen's Iris, and it was attached to your helmet. And we immediately started over relying on that. So before we get to Clark, Chief Halton is not there. So, but when he does come back, if he comes back, I want to talk to, have him speak on what could be an over-reliance on drones, that it is a tool like everything else. And, but I do thank you, both of you guys, for being on. Clark, I know I've been putting you off there. If you go ahead and go ahead, take as much time as you want there, my brother.
Yeah, Cap, thank you. In my first in, we have an area that is zoned rural preservation. And in Clark County, rural preservation means you have a minimum lot size of ½ an acre. There's no sidewalks. There's no street lights. Everyone gets their own mailbox. So what we have is people buying multiple lots, and we have, in effect, these large homes, but they're also mixed in with much smaller homes. The problem we have in this area is our water supply. The hydrants are few and far between. We sometimes routinely have 500-600 foot lays to get to a hydrant. So it's very, very difficult getting water supply to these homes. You need extra apparatus just to establish a water supply. We had a fire one night in this area. We did I think it was a 500 foot lay. We did a split lay, 500 foot split lay to the hydrant. And in the night, it was very, very cold. Believe it or not, it does freeze in Las Vegas. It was freezing. Someone drove over the supply line during firefighting operations and burst the 5-inch. We lost pressure. We had no idea what happened. We had to trace back the line. Found out we did lose a line, so we had to break down and shut down the operation. Put another stick of hose in there, but then we didn't have the manpower to protect the line. Just getting the line in service is one thing, but you have to have personnel on scene to protect that line because it's in such a rural area. There's no streetlights or anything. Vehicles will drive into and over your supply line. So it is absolutely extra apparatus just for the water supply aspect of it.
Clark, and it's also in the urban area. In the Miami area, it is absolutely impractical to try to lay large diameter hose across any major thoroughfare unless you have an army of police officers, because county buses, everybody will drive right over it, and you will lose your water supply. And we it's a topic for another day, but we do tend to put our eggs, too many eggs, all of our eggs in one basket, and rely too heavily on just one line of LDH. Indefinitely, that's not something, you don't buy LDH just because the other departments in your area have it. I'm all for interoperability, But man, if you've got hydrants close, let's say every 300 feet, and you can drop a couple of 3-inch lines, you could drive over 3-inch hose, especially if it was key. You could drive over it with a bulldozer all day long. Did I mention key? Yeah, key hose. And you could drive a M60 tank over the hose, literally, because there was an article, something in firefighting practices by William Clark that in that book that I studied back in the 80s for lieutenant, that said you could modern fire hose and that conventional hose has incredible abrasion and mechanical. Who was that? Was that Trump calling you up again?
Hey, Bill, just to go on what you just said, you started on my mind when you talk about the water supplies, and I had the absolute privilege to be on the 1400 committee. So 1403 is one of our standards, and I think it's 4-12-5. That in training fires, you got to have 2 continuous water supplies. Why in the world would you not do it for an uncontrolled fire, especially in a structure like what we're talking about today? There's absolutely no reason why you should not have 2 continuous water supplies on every fire you go to. At worst, it's just good practice.
Dan, my dad had, came from Chicago, and there, your second line comes off of a second engine from a second source of water. And when he found out how we operate here, he said, Bill, what good is a backup line if it comes off the same apparatus as the primary line? And he's absolutely right. If the apparatus breaks down, well, what do? Well, we're going to have to, what we would do is turn that apparatus, the disabled apparatus, into a manifold and initially pump tank water, but then reestablish a water supply with a functioning apparatus. And this is all easier said than done. Now, one thing that makes it a little bit easier for us is we use a portable hydrant manifold. Clark, I do believe that when you go beyond the range of your pre-connect, say at one of these large homes on the big lots, do you use that large water thief manifold with LDH?
Yes, we do. It's a 5-inch intake. It also has a 5-inch discharge, but then it has 4 2.5-inch discharges on top of it, each controlled by independent valves.
Do you use an inline gauge with those?
It has a gauge in it. Yes, the manifold has an inline gauge in it.
Yeah. Do you experience any of the problems that Laguerre was talking about with because basically it is a big giant Y, but
yeah,
the trunk line, of course, is a lot bigger. I think Dennis's, and we're going to have Dennis on, and he can explain it himself. But I think Dennis, the biggest problems are when you're trying to feed 2-inch and 3/4 lines flowing upwards of over 150 gallons a minute with 1 2.5-inch trunk line. But he has some very, very valid points. So, Clark, you at FDIC, you're going to be talking about facades, and I want to talk to both Jim and Clark and Dan about 2 things. One is brick facades and their propensity to collapse very early. The fact that the building is still standing because the facade is not, I'm talking face brick, facade brick, is not structural, and the structure didn't collapse, is no consolation if you're buried in a pile of bricks. So I want to ask you fellas about that, about the collapse potential of the brick facades on these large homes. And also, Clark, you know that I call it gingerbread, the gingerbread. And it's ornamental type of architectural type of ornamentation. So as long as you have the floor, Clark, any problem with that on these larger homes?
Absolutely. Your residences are going to have all this decorative foam. We have a lot of it in the West, a lot of it in the South. You have a lot of it in Florida. All your All your warmer climate's going to be loaded with this stuff, and it is simply styrofoam. It's called polystyrene foam. It burns at 18,000 BTUs per pound of material, and they simply glue it on the exterior of the house, and they scratch it with 1/16 inch of stucco, and then they paint it. It's around the garages. They use it for window seals. They use it on the eaves, and once it is not difficult for fire to penetrate 1/16 inch of stucco. Multiple times I've had garage fires where the fire obviously rolls up out of the garage door and catches this beam of polystyrene foam, ferociously burns, and then right above that on a 2-story house, there's going to be your rafter tails for the second floor. Multiple times that polystyrene, the immediate flash of that polystyrene pushes that fire directly into those rafters, and now we have fire in between the first and second floor, in between the trusses, because of that extra fuel load in that decorative polystyrene foam. So it burns ferociously.
Jim Walsh, any experience with early collapse of brick facades on these large homes?
So we haven't had actually a collapse issue with that, but we definitely have the problem with there's so much burning that we have to be very aggressive with salvage and overhaul, because if you try to take this lightly and not do damage, then you're going to cause much more damage when the house starts continuing to burn or burns all the way down. So unfortunately, one of the things we have to do is we have to absolutely, really be very methodical about your salvage and overhaul, and actually open things up till it's clean and not worry about the damage. We're definitely worried about the damage, but in the end, we know, and we try to articulate this to the homeowners, that we did less damage this way than it would have been if it would have been any other way.
Yeah, understand. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to piggyback on that for a second. When we're dealing with these McMansions, we're pretty confident that we're dealing with somebody who's insured. And a while back, I actually proposed to our training division that we get some insurance adjusters to come in and actually teach us what they're going to tear out. Because sometimes we're trying to save things that the insurance is going to come in and rip all the sheetrock out and all the carpet out anyways due to the smoke damage. And so we're really putting ourselves in jeopardy to save something that they're not even interested in saving.
Sam, that is an excellent point. Excellent point. Are we going to try that thing in here?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. I'm trying to get these guys to fly this drone in this library here, and they're not going for it. They're not going for it. Let's see. Something else here. Make sure we're getting everybody equal time. Clark, you want to follow up on that as far as the brick facade?
Cat, we don't have a lot of brick facade in Clark County, and when we do, it's really, really thin. It's like 1/4 inch brick, and then they just stick on the side. Really low hazard of that stuff collapsing. It's just stuck on like tile. They use the same thin set as they do for tile, so it's really a low non-issue for us out here in the west, in the southwest.
How about you, Dan Shaw? In fact, I think a fatality somewhere in the Washington Beltway that was attributed to water getting behind the firefighting water getting behind the facade, or was it a gas leak? I can't remember.
I think it was more of a guessing. I think it was in one of the other counties on the other side of the Beltway. But yeah, that's not a huge issue for us. I mean, our biggest issue by far is the construction material, and it is absolutely essential for our incident commanders to always maintain a sense of time and duration of the fire in relation to building construction. We have had probably, rough estimate of that, go back and look at it, is probably 8 separate firefighters who've fallen through holes in floors in residential structures of new construction in the last 2 years because it's gotten this ply eye and the floor goes. And the traditional thought process we would probably all were raised on is that you would have a catastrophic collapse of the entire floor going and you would sense it. That's not occurring. It's, we're seeing it 6-8 minutes into a fire that, especially if it's in the lowest level in the basement, it's attacking the unprotected floor, that you're going to have that catastrophic collapse, because these McMansions are not being built with the finest lumber you can find. It's all long run ply eyes that are fantastic for carrying a load, but terrible for us when it's on fire and you're that load on top of it. So a lot of it goes back into is that maintain that duration of, or the sense of time and duration to the fire and the structure you're fighting fire in. And also your practice, don't have a uniform practice for something like a basement fire. And then you continue to put people at the top of the stairs in the room, which usually is a kitchen, with the greatest dead load over top of a platform that's being attacked by a fire. You shouldn't be surprised when they collapse into the basement. And that's that understanding of the effective reach of your firefighting streams to be able to compartment that fire. And if you have access to the lowest level, attacking a fire directly there, because you have no idea without having a pre-plan of a residential structure, if that's unprotected members in that lowest level that have been attacked by fire for who knows how long. Because if you're talking about long stretches, long driveways, that just means longer till someone calls 911 if they're not occupied in the house. So you have no idea how long this fire has been burning before you get there. And you go back to what Sam was saying, if we apply traditional residential fire tactics to it, you can see you're starting that domino effect for when things would go bad.
Now, I've spent time in Fairfax, as you know, when I was involved with the urban search and rescue teams, and the basements that I were in Fairfax County, in your municipalities, I didn't see a stitch of drywall in the basement ceilings. Is that pretty typical?
Yeah, it's pretty normal. I mean, most of the places you're going to, I mean, again, when they're building, especially townhouses, residential buildings, they're building entire tracts. I mean, they're taking out a commercial building. I mean, if you took that drone and went over top of Fairfax right now and look at our areas, wherever you see an older commercial structure or any other open area, that is quickly being taken up. As I mentioned, we're a vertical city. I think we have 23 high rises that are under permit right now. We're about to cross, because and that's the other part, is we're not constrained like DC is. DC can't go higher than the Washington Monument. We can go as high as we want. So we're up to, I think there's one that's proposed at 600 some odd feet high rise. So I mean, everything is getting more and more built up, which means that we got to turn over and build houses quicker. So when you were talking about buying a residential structure, I assure it's probably a higher add-on cost if you want a finished basement with a drywall in it. Okay, I'll scratch that. I'd rather have, as Sam said, a second laundry room in my bedroom instead of putting drywall in my basement. Yeah, so not good for us, but great for the person who wants to buy the house.
Sam, adding to what you said about the folks are insured, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Not only are they insured, these folks can afford residential sprinklers. And, they've made a financial decision not to sprinkler their properties, especially the basements. And I know that there's a problem with the attics and freezing weather, but you got to have sprinklers in the combustible concealed spaces. We all know that there's been several these large wood frame monsters, as I like to call them. Glenn Corbett calls them toothpick towers. The 13R system, which just sprinklers the occupiable areas. It does not sprinkler the attic or the interstitial space between the ceiling and the floor above, which is formed by that webbing of the I-joist or the parallel cord floor trusses. You can have a building that has a full 13R system and it can be completely destroyed by fire. So as far as the problem with the McMansion, perhaps, and this is something maybe we could look at again, or some of our viewers could add, do any of your authorities having jurisdiction have any kind of ordinance that when you go past a certain amount of square foot of combustible construction, type 5 construction, that you have to have some type of sprinkler protection? I really think that's going to have to be part of the equation, because what we're doing right now, once fire's control of the attic, it's not working. We're behind the 8 ball before we ever show up. So that's my editorial comment for this afternoon. Hey, we're just about ready to wrap this up. Go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just going to say, like everything, when we add something, we have to understand the pros and cons to that. And one of the things that also can get us in trouble in these McMansions is they don't follow a typical footprint. And we look at it like a house and we think, oh, you know, a lot of ingress and egress there. And that's not always the case, because if you look at fire code, egress just has to be in habitable spaces. So you can travel quite a distance or find yourself in a movie theater room without any egress built into that. And so we start adding sprinklers, which we know aren't meant to put the fire out, but to slow it down. And we could find ourselves in cold smoke, zero visibility, far from an exit with low air.
Yes, and this is Sam. I know we're running a little bit over. One of the worst mistakes that a fire officer can make is that attempt a tactic such as a hose advance with not enough people. And in these McMansions, going through the front door to advance the first attack hose line might not be the right idea, because you may have to go several feet and around significant amount of corners in order to reach that seat of the fire. I got to tell you, if I was doing a 360, or if I had my drone and I could see right there on the Charlie Delta corner that that is the fire showing right there at that window, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take in a 15,000 square foot house where I'm going to have to stretch hundreds of feet of hose to reach that fire under the conditions you just described. That's just what I'm going to do. I'm going around to that window and I'm going to take some energy out of that fire. I didn't start the fire, so I'm going to control the fire on our terms. Any closing thoughts? We'll start with Clark Lamping, and then we'll move on to Jim, and then Sam. Clark, anything closing?
Yeah, we didn't even scratch the surface on some of the tactics and strategies for these gigantic buildings. Yep, that's about all I have.
Hey, bro, there's always
4 more hours, right?
There's always next month. Don't worry about it. We'll get it. And
looking forward to seeing everybody at FDIC this year. You know the rules. If you see me in a bar, you come up and you tell me you watch me on the podcast, I'm buying the beers. That's it. That's the rule. Take care. See you guys next month.
All right. We'll see you at FDIC. Clark, Dan, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we did just barely scratch the surface, but if we take anything from this, it is absolute privilege that, my brother from another mother, Doug, and I get to teach 25 to Survive, but I wish we didn't, because the reason we do is because we have so many residential fires and things that don't go great at those. So if you're a data person and you think, hey, I need data to tell me this is a big problem, 73% of the people we took an oath to protect, we know live in a residential structure. Census Bureau tells us that. We've seen a 70% increase in the square footage of home in the last 30 years. They're only getting bigger, and they're getting packed with more stuff that is a steady state of gasoline. And that first thing I talked about, every 64 seconds in the United States, we go to a residential building fire. So the person who gets to craft that narrative is the firefighter or fire officer who's listening to this podcast. And by what you do in the policies and the procedures you have in place, the way you train, the way you drill, and then when you execute, when you're presented with the opportunity, is going to really determine the success of us on the fire ground. So I tell our company officers, look, I can be the best incident commander on the face of the earth. It doesn't matter if those company officers who are the tip of the spear don't execute when they're put in that situation. So it really does come back to the fire officers and the firefighters every day. And this is just one of the issues and the challenges we face, that not so much an obstacle, just an opportunity for us to get better and hone our craft.
Jim Walsh, any final thoughts? Thank you, Dan. Any final thoughts for you, Jim?
Yeah, there's so many things we could continue to say about this, but what I would just challenge everybody to make sure that you are making your apparatus decisions based on your needs and how you operate. And if you don't think about how you operate and your needs in your operation, then you're making some really bad decisions. So I would just challenge everybody to, look past the status quo and make sure that you're setting yourself up for success.
Well said, Jim. I'm so glad that we met, and I'm so glad that we got to do this. And we're going to have you back for sure. And just thank you so much for participating. And you brought so much to the table. Sam, before
Yes, sir.
I'm going
I-
to thank Key Hose for sponsoring us, and that's an easy endorsement for me because I have my hands on the hose all the time. You'll never go wrong with Key Hose with whatever grade that you purchase. So thank you again for Key. Is fire engineering is presenting to everyone. Not quite sure what that means, but Sam, I know that you're always going to have some kind of headgear on, so not to be outdone. And I don't want to endorse Sprinklermatic. I don't. I do teach at their facility at Sprinklermatic University, but this is the Sprinklermatic hat, and this is the urban Sprinklermatic hat, where you can see up underneath. And Sam, I did that. I got this hat just for you. So having said that, the two Andrews, they're off somewhere with their drone. I couldn't get them to fly it in this library. So I guess we're going to wrap this up. We'll be doing next month's installment at FDIC, live from FDIC. So hope to see you then. Until then, God bless you and may he keep you safe in our most noble profession.